What if we told you there's a canal where boats don't just travel through the water, they travel across land? In this episode, we're heading to Poland's beautiful Masurian lakes, where we begin our tour in the town of Ostróda with its quiet waterfront promenade and lakeside views, before going on a cruise on one of Europe's most unusual canal systems, the Elbląg Canal. Following part of its route, we'll experience a waterway that continues to operate in a way rarely seen elsewhere today. A 19th century engineering solution that sees boats lifted from the water onto giant rail carriages to overcome the challenging terrain between the inland lakes and the Baltic lowlands. So come along as we take you aboard a unique canal cruise, where we watch the so-called slipways in action and experience a journey where boats quite literally sail over land. As we continued our journey east towards Masuria, the roads gradually became quieter as we headed further inland. Buildings became more spread out, with noticeably less traffic along the way. Eventually, we reached our accommodation in Ostróda, right by the waterfront. Looking out from the balcony across the promenade and the boats moored below, it wasn't long before the view tempted us out to explore the town on foot. Much of Ostróda sits along the shores of Lake Drwęskie, where we watched boats slowly moving across the lake while water skiers traced steady loops nearby. Lakes like these are less about busy sightseeing and more about spending time outdoors and on the water. The promenade is a shared space for both pedestrians and cyclists, lined with greenery and open views across the water. Extending out from it, a long pier reaches into the lake, opening up wider views across the shoreline surrounding the town. Cafes and restaurants line the promenade, with much of the town's atmosphere shaped by the lake itself. As evening faded over the lake, our attention gradually turned to the journey planned for the next day. A cruise on one of Poland's most remarkable waterways, the unique Elbląg Canal, just a short distance north of Ostróda. To access the canal, we needed to drive deep into the countryside, roughly halfway between Ostróda and Elbląg. The drive led us through vast farmland and long stretches of forest with very little traffic along the way. Eventually, we arrived at our destination just outside the small village of Ingenious, where we could park our car free of charge. At first glance, Ingenious is a fairly unassuming place, with little to suggest that it is home to one of the region's most unusual engineering projects. To understand what makes this place special, we first need to take a step back in time. In the mid-19th century, waterways played an important role in moving goods across this part of northern Poland. Timber, grain, and other agricultural products were transported between the inland lake regions and the Baltic coast near Elbląg. The challenge was the terrain itself. The inland lakes around Ostróda are roughly 100 meters higher up than the lowlands closer to Elbląg, creating a significant difference in elevation along the route. Normally, canals overcome changes in height using locks. But here, the elevation change was considered too great for a normal lock system to work efficiently. So German engineer Georg Jakob Steenke came up with a completely different solution. one that would eventually make the Elbląg Canal one of the most popular tourist attractions in this region. Of course, we couldn't pass up the opportunity to experience the Elbląg Canal for ourselves, and booked a cruise that would take us along part of this unique waterway, beginning in Ingenious and ending in Olesznica. Cruise tickets cost 125 zlotys per person and have to be paid in cash to the captain before boarding. During the summer months, these trips are quite popular, so it's a good idea to book ahead. We've included a link for you in the description below. It may not look like it, but we're actually riding on a boat through a canal. But this one is quite special. Instead of using the traditional lock system, this one has boats driving onto little rail carriages that carry them across the hills to overcome the difference in altitude. Here, a series of so-called slipways replaced what would have been more than 30 traditional locks. These slipways are sections where boats would maneuver onto specially manufactured rail carriages to transport them across the hills and gradually overcome the difference in elevation. From above, the rails become much easier to see. Running alongside the slipway is a simple pedestrian walkway, while underneath, the entire platform slowly climbs the hillside. From this angle, it became much easier to appreciate just how unusual the system is. The whole boat was being carried across land. As you approach a slipway, the boat is carefully guided onto a submerged carriage, hidden beneath the water in preparation for the climb ahead. Much of the mechanism remains invisible at first, with only the rails and parts of the platform beginning to emerge as the boat moves into position. Once everything is properly aligned, the crew signals to the operators that the boat is ready. Moments later, the giant hoisting wheels begin to turn. The cables tighten and slowly the carriage, together with the boat, is pulled out of the water and begins moving up the slope. These slipways allow the entire boat to be carried over land as a single unit. At the top and bottom of each incline, submerged carriages connect with arriving boats before carrying them up or down the slipway. Once the boat reaches the next section of water, the carriage is released underneath the surface and left behind for the next vessel. The boat floated free, detached from the platform, and continued its journey across the next stretch of canal as though nothing unusual had happened. What makes the system even more unusual is that the entire mechanism is powered by water. The system uses the natural difference in water levels between each section of the canal to generate the force needed to pull the boats forward. Between the slipways, the journey felt much more like a regular canal cruise. The boat had a small outdoor section at the back, which offered open views along the canal, while most passengers remained in the covered seating area in the middle. But the best vantage point on the boat was the captain's elevated cabin, which we got to try out as well. From there, you get a much clearer view of the slipway ahead and the positioning of the boat during each stage of the process. On the boat, there was also a fully covered lower deck, offering more protection from the weather, where refreshments were available during the journey. Of course, the organized excursion is not the only way to experience the Elbląg Canal. For those with their own boat and a bit more time, it's also possible to navigate the canal independently and pass through all 5 slipways at your own pace. Back in the day, the completion of the Elbląg Canal coincided with the rapid development of roads and railways. And over time, the waterway slowly lost its economic importance. What remains, however, is something far more unusual. A remarkable piece of engineering that continues to attract visitors long after its commercial role has faded. More than a century later, boats still travel across the slipways, not to transport cargo, but to give people a chance to experience one of Europe's most unique waterways. Together with our time in Ostróda, our cruise along the Elbląg Canal made for an experience that perfectly captures the character of this region. Peaceful, distinctive, and full of unexpected surprises.